So I've taken us to a different portion of the Chicomico Creek that I live on, into a more wooded area, to talk about this next tree, which is the eastern hemlock. So eastern hemlocks are a very important tree species to me and to the general health of the forest. They grow along stream banks on the hillsides leading down to the stream, and they are an evergreen, so they're in the pine family. The botanical name is Tsuga canadensis Pinaceae, and they're a gorgeous, glorious tree. And we don't have a huge stand of them here on this property. Here, I'll twist this a little to show you there. There, you can see them right there, that evergreen. So we don't have a ton of them on this property, just a few small ones leading down into the creek here. But if you've ever been into a zone that has a lot of these hemlocks, they provide this amazing, quiet, sheltered sanctuary with their rusty pine needles all softening along on the forest floor, and they have these big sweeping branches with feathery needles that kind of enclose you in and create this dark, yeah, as I said, sanctuary. And they're a very majestic tree. People often refer to them as the redwoods of the East because they can grow to be an enormous size and, yeah, just a very majestic kind of kingly creature in the forest. And so, eastern hemlocks are an endangered species. They're actually one of our most endangered native North American trees, and they grow primarily here in the East. And they're endangered because of this small invasive insect called the woolly adelgid. And the population in the southern part of the eastern forest, of the eastern hemlock, has been severely decimated from the time of this insect's introduction into the United States to now, to the point where mostly the only trees that are left, hemlock trees that are left, have been ones that have been treated with a particular pesticide. And so we used to be up here in the north less susceptible because of the cold winters, but with climate change, that's really shifting, and a lot of our trees are being affected and starting to die off. And so it's a very pressing issue, and a lot of people, scientists, say that within the next 10 years, the eastern hemlock is said to become extinct in our region, and just the population will push further and further north to where the winters are colder and harsher. And so this is a travesty for a number of reasons, but eastern hemlocks are considered a keystone species in the eastern forest. And so what that means essentially is that, like an archway with a keystone, if you removed the keystone, all the other bricks would fall. So there are many different pieces of the forest that rely upon the presence of the eastern hemlock, specifically the waterways. So eastern hemlocks grow along these hillsides leading down to creeks and woodland ravines and brooks, and they provide filtration of the water. They provide erosion control and nutrient runoff mitigation. They also aerate and oxidize the water, and they keep it shady and cool so that life within the waterways persists as normally and healthfully as ever. And a lot of different woodland wildlife also find shelter in these amazing hemlock coves and under their sweeping branches during harsh winter weather. And a lot of different wild birds eat the seeds from their cones, and a lot of different wild mammals eat the needles. So the needles in the bark, it's a medicine much like pine. A lot of the evergreens are, where they're high in vitamin C, they're nutritious, resin rich, so a great cold and flu remedy, and edible, a wild edible. And actually the immature green cones of the hemlock. So hemlocks have a much smaller little cone than a lot of the other evergreens, and they hang down and they turn like a little tan, reddish tan color in the fall. But when they first emerge, they're a bright green, and it's one of my favorite flavors and wild foods to experiment with because it's a little bit spicy and lemony and really delicious. So hemlock can be used in all of those ways, but I really like to talk about hemlock as this medicinal tree where its medicine is really the role that it plays in the ecosystem and in the whole picture. And so, of course, if you have a hemlock, make sure that it hasn't been one that's been sprayed or injected with this pesticide for the woolly adelgid, and experiment with it as food, as medicine, but long time also harvested like the pine, the white pine, for its amazing lumber. I definitely just try and present it to people as this amazing ecological tree with such broad ecological significance, and to see it just as that, as this beautiful thing. And the real specialness of going into those hemlock dominated woodlands is, it can't be matched. So as we still have this tree around here, to do all that we can to protect it and educate people about it, but also just to treasure it while we still have it. And it will be really fascinating and devastating to see what happens in the forests and to these waterways as these trees die off up here. Because in the south, I remember I went to college, and there were places that I used to visit that were hugely hemlock, a huge prevalence of hemlock. And then later going back, and these amazing crystalline pure rivers and streams now were just surrounded by these rust-colored ghosts on the hillside. And it was very sad to see, and I don't know what it looks like now down there, but I'm sure it's not great. So just wanted to add this tree, not so much for our personal use, but just to kind of think about the whole picture of the eastern forest, and how there are a lot of trees like this tree that are endangered, and it's not all just this healthy place because it exists. And trees are old, so a lot of that demise takes kind of an equally long time to show itself to us. But another piece that I wanted to talk about too was with the death and dying of the hemlock, there is a special medicine that is produced, and that is also the reishi mushroom, the native North American reishi mushroom. So that's Ganoderma tsugai, so the species is like tsuga. So it's a hemlock-specific mushroom, a shelf mushroom, and it's this really gorgeous mushroom. So it has this white underside, and then a white fleshy front when it first emerges, and that fades into bright shiny orange and shiny brown, and then as it matures, it just kind of turns this whole reddish shiny brown, and then just white on the underside. And so Ganoderma lucidum is the Chinese reishi mushroom that grows natively in China, although it can be grown here locally. And so that's the medicine that's been used for a long time in traditional Chinese medicine as this amazing adaptogen. So an adaptogen is a medicine that helps our bodies adapt to change and to stress. Essentially, they help our bodies come back into balance, to create homeostasis between all the different systems and all the different organs. They act on our hormone axis, the HPA axis, to kind of bring us back into that balance. And there are a number of adaptogens, and they all sort of have do this whole holistic balancing act, but they each have different systems and organs that they have a stronger affinity for. So reishi, the Chinese, and then I like to use this native one to where I live, to where we live, has an affinity for the immune system and for the heart. And for the immune system, what it does is it balances the immune system. So if you have an overactive, hypersensitive immune system, it can help bring that down back into balance. And then if you have an underactive immune system, it can help bring that up into balance. And so it's pretty special in that way. And then for the heart, in traditional Chinese medicine, there's this concept of the Shen, which is basically the spirit. And reishi has long been used as this calming Shen medicine to kind of bring the spirit back from its disturbed state, which is said to happen from some sort of trauma or grief. And in that way, reishi can be this great tonic. So it's a tonic herb, definitely not something that you would use acutely for sickness or acutely for a bout of emotional distress, but taken over a long time, can kind of bring both the emotional heart and some physical heart aspects into regularity and balance, and then also bring the immune system into balance, so that then when you are faced with something that's challenging, either emotionally or immune-wise, then you have this deep strength. So it's this long-term vitality tonic. And as I said, I like to use. There hasn't been as much research done on the hemlock, the North American reishi, but I like to use it, and I like to. It's water and alcohol soluble, so I'll do this thing that's called a double extract tincture, where you tincture the mushroom and then let that sit for a while, and then strain off the alcohol, retain the alcohol, decoct the mushroom that you had in the alcohol, so that used up mark is what it's called. Decoct that into a strong tea, and then combine the tea and the tincture, and then you have this very rich, potent medicine that has all those different components. And I also like it just in tea, so it's got a mushroomy taste, but it's rich and dark and not overbearing in any kind of way, so it makes a good addition to soup stocks. It also makes a great kind of like base for a chai tea or a hot chocolate or a coffee substitute because of that heaviness that it has. So I like to use it in that way. And as I said, it has that white line on the outside, and some people do cut that off and harvest it and cook it. That's the only part that's really edible. Otherwise, it's not something that you want to actually chew on when you use it in your soup stock. You want to take it out, or if you use it in your tea, you don't want to eat it. But I recommend harvesting it once it's reached this all brown phase, so then you know that it will have set spore, so that it can continue to grow again. And that's sort of the more ethical way to harvest it, rather than harvesting it when it has that amazing white fading to orange and brown look about it. So when it's in that phase, just honor it and then come back later for it. So yeah, so that's the eastern hemlock, Tsuga canadensis, and the reishi, the North American hemlock reishi. And this little friend that I'm sitting in right here, this is one of our native horsetails. It's colloquially called scouring rush, because it's so tough that people would scour their pots with it. It's beautiful, and there's a really strange little patch of it here for some reason. So